I'll open the floor up for questions. And then any other chiefs who want to speak from PAGC or MLTC who may be online. Okay, so with that, here is MLTC Vice Chief Richard DeRocher with some opening comments.
Good afternoon. Richard DeRocher, Sika Sinoma. Pasko Sayaga Notse. You know, I'd like to first of all thank our elders. I'd like to thank our elders for lifting the pipe for us this morning for the safety of our communities, the safety of our leadership, and so that we all return home safe to our home fires after we're done here today. We are here today to bring awareness and share with you how our communities are feeling. Our communities are feeling very unsafe at this time by a rash of different reasons. I spent 3 days this last week with the nurses of MLTC. We brought in all our 9 community nurses into our MLTC office and had a session with them for 3 days. And 1 day was spent specifically on safety of them, of their clients, of our facilities in our communities. Some of the things that they brought up and what their wish list was: 24-hour security in our health centers, cameras in our health centers and outside our health centers, as well as a 6-foot fence all around the yard of our community health centers. That tells you a little bit of where our communities are at. And these are employees sharing their concerns about safety at the workplace. We have elders who are sleeping with guns or bats or something close to their beds for safety reasons in some of our communities. We have parents that are safe and concerned about the safety of their children and about the raising of their children in our communities. This is the reason we want to bring awareness to these safety issues. Not the usual work safety issues, but violence safety issues. You know, educators in the schools fear for their safety, fear for their children's safety in the schools. This is the reason we're here. We're not here to lay blame. We're here to raise awareness, to let the governments know that we're not all right in our communities. Our elders are scared. Our children are scared. As I listed, our nurses, our educators, our parents. So that's why we're here today, to bring that awareness out to the governments, to bring them to the table so they can understand us. Come to the communities and see firsthand. Spend a couple days there, a week there, so they can understand of where our communities are at, our 9 communities of the Meadow Lake Tribal Council. I have our chiefs behind us and a few chiefs beside me. as well as our Vice Chief, NA Vice Chief Lawrence McIntyre, will have speak. But that's the message that I would like to relay today.
Thank you very much. Monsieur Vice Chief Lawrence McIntyre, Ushesi, English River First Nation, Meadow Lake Tribal Council, Alas na Gonzanega. Aso da yung Utsagaya or in Najonala. Uni Hane, ito ay gila, us Canada Lehali. Us Canada Lehali. Us Canada Lehali. When it's a dirty, the antecedent, a sudden daily. A two gauli oha. A two set a second night do, a second diha. I'm glad to be here. To also acknowledge chiefs, to acknowledge the president of the Métis Society of Saskatchewan, also the Grand Chief. It's a very touching and important crossroads we're at in our communities today. In terms of the parsimonious funding that we get, in terms of the things that we need to address, a lot of the things that are getting out of hand. The other thing that's really important is the last 2 or 3 months at the Meadow Lake Tribal Council. We've had conferences in relations to domestic violence. We've had conferences in relation to men's wellness and to the root of some of the things that's happening in our community. So where together we would address these concerns. And like Vice Chief mentioned, Vice Chief DeRocher mentioned in terms of our community need to be safe, need to feel safe. But therefore, that's why we are bringing this issue up to the table. Yeah, thank you very much, Marcy Cho.
Good afternoon. Senior Makadra Dushe, in Juris Chosen and History. Marcy Salute in the weather with Annie. The negator Yano Nene and how the Lily. They are doing a job for Nidja, but I would say to Liha. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Norma Carrat, and I'm from Buffalo River Nation. I would like to commend everybody that has organized this and for the support from all 3 different Northern Region organizations. We are in a pandemic in our communities. I had called a state of emergency in June, and I had to recall it again. And the things that are coming into our community, things that are foreign to our people, have left a big impact on our people. And now we need resources to help us to be able to help our people and our communities to be safe again. And right now, it is pretty tough to be able to say that we have the support, because we don't. I've been knocking on doors for the last few months, and it's really frustrating to be told that they're not responsible and they're not responsible. It's a hot potato game that's been going on for years. And we are frustrated. We are asking for the government to come with resources and services for our people. Your system hasn't worked for us since you put it in place. It's time you ask us what we think would work for us in our communities. Because that's the only way we're going to be successful in providing the resources and the services to our people. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening. Marcy Cho.
Good afternoon, gentlemen, chiefs, past chiefs, elders that are gathered today here. One of the things, I'm not going to go into all the details of what and why we're here. I think we all know why we are here. A lot of our communities have seen a lot of struggles, and we're still seeing struggles since day one, with alcohol abuse, and drug abuse, and all kinds of things that come along with that. When I say being blunt, I mean straight up. You know, these Band-Aid solutions that have been thrown at us for many, many years has to stop. It has to stop, and we have to come up with a solid solution of how we can govern ourselves and work with the governments. We've talked about, more increase of RCMP within communities. I'll give you a prime example. Where I come from Clearwater, we have the attachment there. They're doing their best, but they're overworked. They're overworked. Not enough bodies out there. But once they come onto the reserve, things quiet down. And that's just a prime example of how it would be if we had more on reserve RCMP, Aboriginal RCMP. So those are the things that we need to look at. I mean, like I said, for many years, and this has been going on for decades. It's almost like we've been dropped in a certain area and kind of like forgotten about. But I think it's time that, back in the day, people used to sit back, nod their heads in agreement. But today is a different story. We are totally different. We are well educated, and we know what our communities need. So it's time the government step up. Both federal, provincial, Mr. Trudeau, Mr. Scott Moe, we need to fix this. We're losing our people. We need more programs. We need to get them back on track. Like I said, no more Band-Aid solution. It's time to step up and give it all you can and make things right with us. I'm not just saying come in and fix everything for us. We will be right there fixing it with you. Policy making. We need to be included in these policies. Instead of sending your office down south or in Ottawa making these policies on our behalf without our input. No more of that. You need to hear us. You need to understand us because we are the ones that live within these communities and we see the struggles that our people are going through. So again, I invite both governments to come to a table and sit with everybody and work together and find a solution. Like I said, no more Band-Aid solution. We need a solid solution. Thank you very much. Mercy Cho.
This morning, kaya sa tigil kapataman, First Nation, ATS, at Nanisopsik, ayam biya, kalimutan matiwil ang iskawya. The provincial, federal governments, and state institutions, industry, kanstutak ko, kantuktawi ako, tigoy man pa. I sit here when I'm watching, and it's great to see, to be able to have the media here, to be able to talk about the issues that are going on in our community. In my community, we were to tell the individual stories in regards to what goes on in our communities. My community alone, in the last 20-some years, we've lost over 100 people to suicide and alcoholism. And that's not talking about incarcerated individuals in our communities. And if you compare those notes in regards to right across northern Saskatchewan and some southern communities, the story is the same. So when we sit like this and begin to talk about issues that we have, hopefully that the governments are listening. And like Chief Teddy said, hopefully they can come and sit with us and to be able to plan out a process in regards to how we can do that. But the one thing is very clear in regards to the many times that incidents have happened in Indigenous communities, Métis or First Nation, is that we throw mainstream, hopefully, healing tools, but it hasn't worked. If you look at the track record of the provincial government, federal government, regards to what has happened. You look at residential schools, 60 school foster homes, and apprehension cases. It's a bad record. And today we sit here to be able to talk about what has happened, but what hasn't happened is to be able to look at Indigenous governments, to be able to look at it from a distinction-based way and approaches and delivery systems that we need to have. In my community of Pine House, drinking capital of the North in the 70s, how did we change? By taking ownership of our lives and our circumstances. And it has changed from night, it's just like night and day now in regards to where we are. We still have issues. Matter of fact, my son is still caught up in drugs in the community of Pine House. I was talking to my wife and I talked to him yesterday. But at the end of the day, governments have got to start thinking outside the box, to be able to respect and understand, try as much as they can to understand in regards to what the issues that are going on in our communities. But more importantly, regards to residential schools and what has happened in previous years where young kids were taken away from their homes to be able to be in a foreign place without their language. It's always been based on identity, culture, values, and language, and that's what we've lost. To be connected with our ways, to be connected with our elders, our communities, to be able to do the job that needs to be done. People have got to start listening to us. Otherwise, it will not change. We'll sit here again a year from now or a couple of years from now, and we'll be still talking about the same thing if the governments don't come on site and sit with us to be able to formalize a plan regards to how we're going to address issues that are happening in our communities. Alcoholism, drugs, gangs, and the list goes on. Those are the things that we have to discuss. A lot of people talk about reconciliation. For me, it's a word that's used without evidence to be able to support the capacity that goes along with reconciliation in regards to what we can do in our communities to be able to develop programs for Indigenous people, Métis and First Nations, and Inuit. Indigenization, people talk about indigenization. People talk about assimilation. It's alive and well. So many times we're not taken into consideration because status quo, the policies of this country have always alienated our communities, our governments, and not participate. So I look forward. This is a good day today to be able to talk about our issues, Métis and First Nation, and to be able to have federal and provincial governments be able to listen and say, let's work out a plan. Let's work together and we'll formalize a plan to be able to address the issues that are going on in our communities. So for me, I'm glad to be here. I'm very supportive of the efforts that we are going to do. And hopefully that the governments will come on site and sit with us and to be able to talk about issues. Because I know it can be done. Right now, Batoche lands are given to us this summer. We're going to be breaking ground for Dumont Scouts, we're going to involve our young people. We're going to have a 40-bed facility for alcoholism and drugs. That's what we're going to be doing. We're going to start comparing notes, Métis and First Nations, but federal and provincial governments need to participate and give the right capacity in order to address reconciliation. Because it's not in the hands of governments, in the hands of our governments, Indigenous governments. So with that, I'm glad to be here. Thank you very much.
That's one way to thank the creator for assembling us here today. First of all, I want to acknowledge our chiefs of the Prince Albert Grand Council. Some of them are sitting here with us, and of course I see it as a partnership and trying to make our First Nations communities a safer place for our families. I think I acknowledge the partners in Meadow Lake and also the Métis Nation here. I also important that I acknowledge our elders, of course, that lift up the fight, but the elders in our communities, and our grassroots people in our communities. For the Prince Albert Grand Council, it's a it is an awareness. Like to make sure that's out there. It's an awareness. For the Prince Albert Grand Council, it's for those immediate solutions. Those immediate calling on the governments, both level of governments here this afternoon. And there's also a short term and a long term solutions that many of the First Nations, and I also acknowledge our member nations that are doing good work in their nations, Red Cree Nation, that have a strong justice initiative. Cumberland House Cree Nation that they're working on a community safety plan, like they're on the Indian Band. They're working on a community safety plan, and I sure would like to give a later on, pretty quick here, Chief Karen Burton, BBCN, an opportunity here to speak, because I think they come up with something today in their Chief of Councils. But what is that? The immediate solutions that we're talking about, the resources, what are those? A lot of it has to do with policing. The fact that the First Nations policing agreement, they came to an end, and it's out there. It's being developed. We've asked for it to be co-developed, but we're not part of it. It's otherwise known as the CPAs, Community Tripartite Agreements. The police presence in the communities, the response time, and very important, the prevention part, which the RCMP don't refuse to do, the prevention part. So that's important to point out. Also, so it's the police presence, but there's also a lot of mental health area that we asked again, and that's the support from the governments. And I know we have that right now, but like a First Nations model, what was discussed in a conference in Toronto earlier in October. So I'm going to end there, but also very important is the community safety officers. The Vice Chief Sandy will talk about the stuff, the letter of intent that the Prince Albert Grand Council they signed, and also what is that letter of intent and some of the programs that we are working with today. But I sure hope we get the opportunity for some of our chiefs to have an opportunity to speak here. But I led with that. I thank the media here for doing this. And we're just calling on the government for those immediate solutions that we need, and what the previous speakers here, the chiefs that spoke about. And the community said, if we're gonna, I guess at the end to conclude, if we're gonna make these changes the challenges that we have in our communities, we have to work together. We have to unite. And I think that's what I see as this press conference today, is that we're uniting, and that we're willing to work, and we ask the government and the RCMP to work with us, and they just set up those meetings, and they make our communities safer communities for our families. They raise their children, and so I thank you for that. Thank you very much. I'll hand this over to the Vice Speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Desani, Vice Chief with the Prince Albert Grand Council. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge our partners. Our northern partners continue to be very resilient people. The Métis Nation and the Meadow Lake Tribal Council are close allies, close friends. They're our neighbors. A lot of the challenges that we have in our northern communities are, we have families that are traveling in and out of these communities. We've been doing that for thousands of years, trading and talking and negotiating and looking for ways to improve our First Nations communities in the north. We have a huge land base within the Prince Albert Grand Council, Meadow Lake Tribal Council, the Métis Nation that we have. Between the two First Nations, between Meadow Lake Tribal Council and the Prince Albert Grand Council, we have 40 communities. Even within the Prince Albert Grand Council, we have 50,000 First Nation members that is under the umbrella of the Grand Council. But I'd like to acknowledge the frontline workers that we have within this province, and especially in our northern communities. From the bottom of our hearts, we thank you, because we know that the programs and services that are out there to help our people, they are underfunded, under-resourced. Our staff, the frontline workers, the RCMP, the health officials are working overtime, and a lot of them are burning out because those services don't meet the current needs within our communities. We know the challenges with the RCMP. At a national level, there is a shortage of RCMP all across this country to even meet the needs of our communities. This past October, the Grand Council had signed a letter of intent with the federal government and the provincial government. We have a good working relationship with our partners, with the province and the federal government, in terms of looking at alternative policing solutions for the Prince Albert Grand Council. We have a good team that we developed. We built that relationship the last number of years. But there's steps, there's process, work needs to be done, and that will take some time. I know that a lot of the communities want immediate action, solutions to our communities, but we are just not there yet, unfortunately. We should have been there a long time ago. We've been working at this since 2018 regarding the policing service, the mandate from our First Nation communities to look at alternative policing solutions within our northern communities. We are doing that. We are building that model that will make it easier for other First Nation communities to transition into self-administered policing in the future. But again, it's going to take some time. There is no modern Indigenous First Nations policing model that is out there. A lot of them has been created years ago. So we are, with our 28 First Nation communities, going to be engaging our First Nation communities, talking about solutions in terms of the challenges that we have within our communities and how we can make our communities safer for our children. Another part of policing is community safety planning. There is a national association of community safety groups that are out there. They collaborate within the cities, but there is no First Nation support in terms of community safety planning. So we are engaged with Halifax, Thunder Bay, Edmonton Reach, with the universities, with our mental health people, the experts that are out there in trauma, the RCMP, the city police, and we're going to be bringing people together and to talk about how do we design a model that is going to meet the needs of our First Nation communities. We will come together and we'll design that model. and we will help our First Nations communities take ownership of their community challenges and identify the threats that are out there and the needs, and making sure that it doesn't sit on the shelf somewhere and forgotten about it until another tragedy happens. So we will engage and design those models. We will bring our communities together and start talking about how do we decentralize policing? Why do we always put policing at the center of every challenges that we have within our communities? What about the other resources? The mental health, the education, the poor quality housing that we have within our communities. When children are going to school hungry, the high cost of power bills that we have to pay in our northern communities. We've been paying over $2 a liter in our northern communities for how many years? And here with a little increase of gas here, everybody's crying. We've been paying top dollar for every services that we get in our northern communities. The food security is becoming a challenge. Climate change is threatening our communities. To navigate, to hunt for our caribou takes about 16 hours just to get to the herd up into the Arctic. But at the end of the day, as adults, as a province, as government and leaders, we have that obligation, we have that responsibility to advocate for all our communities within this province. The northern communities are part of Saskatchewan. So many times we talk about we want our own jurisdiction within this province, we want to have our own rights. We feel like that in the north. Sometimes we feel like we're not part of this province. We're contributing so much. Our people are big resources to the province. Our land provides so much for this province. And we continue to send our children to school hungry, go to sleep while they're scared. The community safety is very important. We are calling on the province and the federal government to come to the Northern Administrative District community to talk about the real challenges that we have in our communities. Talk about green energy solutions so we can reduce the cost of energy. Why hasn't that happened? Yes, SMRs are talked about, but we have alternative energy that we can provide for our communities. We have a virus that is coming into the community and it's growing. It's growing to a point where we're going to continue to see serious crime and violence continue to happen within our communities if we don't do anything and come together as this province. If we love our children, if we want to leave a good legacy, we need to create a safe community, a safe and healthy community and a province where we can all raise our children to be the best that they can be. They are our biggest resources, more than anything that we have, more than farming, more than mining, more than the oil that we talk about, is our people. The work that we're going to continue to do, we're breaking ground. We're working with the universities, we're working with the RCMP, the health providers. We're coming together because we have to. We have no other choice, with very little support in terms of the resources and money to bring people together. But we will do it because we continue to be resilient. So I call on the governments, the employment, education, housing, the needs that we have in our northern communities. As leaders, we have to hold them to account. They are accountable to our communities as well. They have to do their work and go out there and advocate the programs and services that are needed in northern Saskatchewan as well. Why don't we have paved roads when we've been contributing to everywhere else? Why can't we build a single road into one of our communities? Why can't we have proper healthcare service for our First Nation communities? Why can't we be those partners, meaningful partners, so we can direct proper health services for our people without getting kicked out of the hospital? Why do we have our jails and our penitentiaries filled with our First Nations people? So with that, I do want to thank everybody for the opportunity, and we will continue to do the work. It's very tiring. Sometimes we work 12 to 15 hours a day dealing with emergency situations. Our communities continue to grieve day after day. Our children are being traumatized day after day. If we don't deal with trauma within 17 hours, it gets very difficult in helping that child deal with trauma. Very hard. The violence we see today is just going to continue to escalate if we don't do anything. So we need to have our northern meeting to talk about real issues and how we can move this province forward together without being left behind or taken advantage of. We are human. We have children that want opportunities like every other child that we have within this province. So with that, Chiefs, thank you very much, and we'll continue to work together. We are a family as a North. We have children that we have to leave a good legacy for them, to the mothers and the family, and to our women chiefs that are here that continue to struggle. Great, safe communities. Thank you very much. Hope I didn't take too much time.
Thank you, Vice Chief. This time I'd also like to acknowledge the other chiefs who are here with us today. We have Chief Ronald Midswing from Magwa Sagahegan First Nation. And we also have Chief John Badidika from APTN Nation. Online, we have Okamau Burns of James Smith Cree Nation. We have Chief Jonathan Sylvester from Birch Narrows Dene Nation, as well as Chief Karen Bird of Peter Valentine Cree Nation. And here to my right is Chief Joyce McLeod Natohau of Montreal Lake Cree Nation. So at this time, if there are any chiefs who want to speak, and I'll turn that mic over.
Chief
Good
Burns.
afternoon. Good afternoon, chiefs. Good afternoon, Métis Society, and also Dara, my friend there, my friends from Meadow Lake. And asking you now for giving us an opportunity to say a few words. First, I want to say I think we're living in a crisis right now, and there's not one thing, not one organization to blame, nor our families to blame, because it's the whole thing was created for many years. The alcohol was created for many years, and I just want to say, people are hurting. When people are hurting, that's when they resort to alcohol. When people are hurting, that's when they resort to drugs. When people are hurting, that's when they resort to other means just to survive. And when we talk about intergenerational trauma, we are facing it back homes. Even for myself in Montreal Lake, I am the chief of Montreal Lake, and I want to commend on Chief Karen Bird, who said, these headdresses are heavy. And I say that it's not because they're heavy; they are heavy. But there's a lot. We have a lot to deal with back homes. We deal with the homelessness. Every day I drive around the city here, even in Prince Albert. it's not only the communities, but it's always also in the cities, because I see my members struggling in the cities. And I also see other nations members who are also struggling. And it is true. Like we face face all the trauma. We face all the trauma that's happening back home. Back home where I come from, we had three RCMP standoffs in 4 months. You know, that's almost one a month. We have people that have been incarcerated, you know, and coming back this month. So we have a couple of them coming back, and you know, people are scared. You know, people are scared. You know, what's going to happen? Sometimes maybe we can BCR them. That's all. Sometimes that's the only option we have. A lot of times that doesn't work, you know, because they have families there. We can't ban them. We can't ban our own people from the communities, because that's where else are they supposed to go? If that's the case, then you know they come to the city, then they cause more trouble in the city. There has to be something. For me, it has to be something that should be done while they're incarcerated. There should be some programs that should be done that should be helping them while they're incarcerated, so that way maybe they can change. You know, but there also a lot of them are also released early. I mean, why are they released early? You know, those are the problems that I see in regards to the justice system. It just doesn't work for Native people. It doesn't work for us because, you know, we have different cultures, we have different ways of living, and we have different understandings. I know the criminal law itself is not working for us because it was created years and years ago, and it doesn't work for First Nations people. I know the RCMP is not an answer. We work very well with the RCMP, but at the same time, you know, that's just a small percentage of problem there. We also know with you know, like today, like we have people, the RCMP people that RCMP members that have COVID, and they're always understaffed. And so that's just a small percentage. You know, we've had in my community, we've had safety meetings. We've had one of the RCMP employees that come to the reserve to talk to us about the gangs, with the colors of the gangs, the numbers of the gangs. You know, so we can have that awareness. And she's been to the schools too, and trying to make us aware. You know, this is what's going on. And but we deal with that. We also have in communities like Little Red, like we're 106B from Montreal Lake, we have people, maybe have about 20 roads connected to the reserve. So where else, even if we had security, where do you put them? Security are always there. We resort to security to work with the RCMP back home, but you know, they're putting their lives on at risk, because you know they're not armed. Even the conservation officers are armed, but you know, we don't have security that are armed. Most of the times they have their flashlights, and that's all they have. But you know, when the gang members are driving in, like we have people. Sometimes we hear about strange people coming in and driving in, and you know, there's a lot of B&Es happening. You know, they're coming in, you know, because somebody owes drug money, and you know, they're coming in to collect. That's common in other communities. In my community also, so we see a lot of that. We hear firecrackers, you know, fire. We hear the noises, and almost like it's just common. We see the RCMP or ERG teams driving in. You almost look at them as that is common. It is not common. It shouldn't be like that. You know, it's for the kids get traumatized. We get traumatized. The elders get traumatized. So you know, we have the solution. I am really happy to be here, because you know, we're putting our minds together, we're putting our heads together, because we're all facing the same challenges back home. And hopefully, you know, hopefully we have some answers. Hopefully we have some answers from the government, because you know, we never asked to live on the reserve. We were put there. We were assimilated. You know, we never asked to be. So that would be like, this is all historic. And now that we're stuck in the reserve, I mean, you know, what do we do? So hopefully something comes out of this press conference because I'm asking I had.
Chiefs, waiting to speak.
So, yes, now I'm gonna turn it over to, Ogama Chief Wally Burns, who's online right now.
Good afternoon. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the elder that said the prayer and also the ones that lifted the pipe this morning. I'd like to elaborate and echo the same things in regards to what is happening in all communities across Turtle Island. James Smith was one that was hit so hard that, you talk about traumatization, well, it's there. We're still feeling the effects on what's happening on January 4th. And from there, we've been very adamant and very focused on the things that need to be done in our nation. I've been sleeping with very little rest, but I'm still going in regards to what needs to be done for our nation. It's been an honor and privilege from the AFN, our national chief, to sit in with the public and safety ministers across Canada, and also with the provinces. And the thing about this is we all echo the same in regards to violence, gangs, drugs, alcohol. You name it. All this thing stems down to the residential school and what happened. There was a lot of discussion in regards to residential school, but what is the purpose and the meaning, and how are we supposed to work with our families that need help? All the systems that came through the federal government had failed us, and we want to move forward. Well, this is how we, in my community, this is what we're gonna do. I've been to several meetings across Canada already in regards to policing, tribal policing, immediate emergency and community planning. All of that networking has to be done through the grassroots level. Our community is still in shock and very uneasy on who walks through that door. We still have people in our community sleeping with their guns. I remember 30 years ago, we never had all this. Anybody can go visit anybody with their doors open. So when we talk about an emergency and a response plan, well, let's do it. Work with our tribal council, FSIN, AFN. All of this information that was discussed is all faced in every community across Canada. The justice system has failed us. The parole board has failed us. So we need to look at it in a perspective where the needs of the people, the wants of the people, and exercise our right. So far, I've been to a lot of meetings, and a lot of them asked me, "Do you have a police chief?" And we just seconded a police chief of our own. Jason Stonechild is our police chief. Our director of justice is Eddie Head. So these two people I trust verily are going to be with me in every move that we make with governments, all level of governments. And we just spent a tremendous amount of money in regards to vehicles, so we can show the people in our community we mean business and we're going to protect our own people. Right now, our warriors, our own warriors, are in a black cloud, and those warriors are supposed to protect our nation, not fight against our chief and council. So let's do some work, all of us. Let's move ahead in regards to the future of the kids. It takes a community to raise a kid. So in the next little while, I'm going to be on the road and making sure that, I'm going to push and help any First Nation that comes through my door. So we're already in design stage on developing our own police station. So with that, I thank you and talk again soon. Later.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'll turn it over to Chief Jonathan Sylvester. He's from Birch Narrows, Métis Nation.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the elder for the prayer and thank everyone that put in this important media release together also. I feel that we need to address these important issues that we are facing. We also need to remember that there is a lot of trauma, and like Joyce McLeod said, intergenerational trauma that is in our communities that we are all facing. We need more support and resources from the government to help address these crises that are happening. We need to be proactive with these issues rather than reactive. I feel that in my community, we are facing the aftermath of what we went through with COVID. With all the easy resources that were easy to access for our community members. Before COVID, I feel that there was less substance abuse and addictions before, and then now today we find that it is way higher. And I feel that I do know this is time that we come together and we need to plan as a whole for a long-term plan. But also keep in mind that immediate actions we also need right now. So I know if the government is hearing our plead on the crisis that everyone mentioned around the table that we face in our communities, we need your resources. We need support in our communities. We need it right away. So that's pretty much all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Next, we have Chief Karen Bird of Peter Ballantyne Cree Nation.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me well. I am traveling right now, so I'm just stopping to make a comment here. Good afternoon, elders. Good afternoon, senators. Meadow Lake Tribal Council chiefs, our Métis leader here, our PAGC chiefs leadership. I thank you for giving me a few moments to speak this afternoon. This past week, I've traveled to two of the biggest communities in Peter Ballantyne Cree Nation. As you are aware, I am a chief of the biggest First Nation in Saskatchewan of 12,000 people. 8 communities that I'm responsible for, one chief for 8 communities. And I've been having to deal with emergency after emergency, losing lives on our reserve due to the violence that's been happening. And, it could overwhelm a leader, and I understand, and I am in support of what's happening here with the media release of calling a state of emergency. I had called a chief and council meeting this past 2 days with my councilors to declare a local state of emergency for Peter Ballantyne Cree Nation. We need to allocate all the human resources, the fiscal resources that we need, and also calling on Indigenous Affairs to assist us to help our First Nation members. We cannot go another day and losing more lives. We are dealing with funeral after funeral. Within this year, we are dealing with a $1 million bill at the funeral home. For the many people we have lost in Peter Valentine Cree Nation due to the pandemic, due to the violence, the health of our people. And I have been saying this to the public and to the media. We have 12,000 people and 905 houses. And I was at the biggest community of Peter Valentine Cree Nation and asked the youth, what is the math in that? If you have 12,000, divide that into 900. How many is there in one house if you were to put it that way? And we had a good discussion, 3 hours in each community that I went. And this is an emergency that we have to address and plead to the other nations, to work together. We have seen what's happened in James Smith, and we have gone there as a nation to go help and support and just be there and be with them. And that's one of the things the elders have said. You don't have to say anything, just go be there and be with them. And that's what we have tried to do, and just be there with our, Chief Wally Burns and his community members. Because it is so tragic what had happened, and our hearts go out to the families that continue to go on without their loved ones today. And the elders that speak, there's many people that I have come across in this time that I've gone to the communities just to support. So, I just want to say thank you for doing this, Meadow Lake Tribal Council, PAGC, to come together with the chiefs and the Métis Nation, to come together and walk together in this. Together, we are stronger. Together, we can do much more. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a few words. Tinigi, God bless you.
So thank you, Chief. I do want to acknowledge that we have a Chief Deputy here with us from Métis Nation, as well as Wayne Smeganis from Little Pine First Nation. Okay, so with that, if there aren't any more comments, then I'd like to open it up for questions. So we'll start with the media here, and then we'll go online.
I'm Tegan, I'm with Global Saskatchewan. This question is for Brian. You mentioned you're looking for both short and long-term solutions. What do you see as short-term solutions, and what do you see as long-term solutions?
From Global, is it? Thank you for the question. So what the Silver Grand Council and the mandate that we have from our chiefs for short term, I see as this press conference those short term solutions that things that are doable now. And that's mostly what most of our communities, I think, in the Meadow Tribal Council, in the Métis Nation, the only policing that we have is the RCMP right now. And what could happen right now immediate is that we can meet with the North District, the F Division, Indigenous Policing, and we can meet with the Attorney General of Canada. And then we can meet with the public safety and ask for our community First Nations, the BCRs, to be enforced by those RCMPs. That could happen immediately. And we can also ask the federal government, the Public Safety Canada, is to enforce a lot of the First Nations that bylaws that they've done in the past that were enforced at one time, and because of something that happened in the House a few years back, those bylaws, First Nations bylaws, that used to have to be approved by the Minister of back then in Indian Affairs, Indigenous Services Canada now. He has to sign off those First Nations bylaws. That does not have to happen because of something that happened in the House with the private members, and then when the Indian Act was amended, and now the federal government, because of that, took away the federal crown prosecutor. So these are provincial court that we have here in the province. So now the RCMP don't have to enforce those First Nations bylaws. So those are just a couple of examples of immediate things. But those meetings with the RCMP, I think it's important for the presence, the response. I think we're doing that in some of our First Nations. You know, some of our First Nations that do not have detachments in their First Nations because they're small First Nations. That's something that could happen right now. That could happen immediately, and that's what this press conference is for. That's what I mean by the short-term and immediate, doable solutions that can happen to make our communities safe. And there's those long-term. And long-term is it's a short-term for some, but we heard the Chief Burns talk about that they already have a design for a building for a self-administered policing. But those are, to us, the Prince Albert Grand Council, long-term goals that we're looking at. The community safety plans that Vice Chief taken the lead on is very important. It's an initiative that's been a federal initiative that's been there for 10 years. You know, our First Nations could ask the federal government, meet with the government. I think that could happen right now. And those are important, you know, it's a plan. It's a plan on making your community a safe place. It's a plan where you're just not relying on the police for that protection, for that safety. It's a plan also to utilize all your resources that you have now in the community. So those are just kind of a long answer, but that's an answer for the short term and that's long term. Thank you very much again for your question. I hope I answered.
You know, we have a question online. Hello. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Sorry, normally I would put my video on, but it lags the internet. So my name is Sam Sampson. I work at CBC News. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. On that same note, Chief Hardlett, I'm wondering what you think of the province's Marshal's service that was recently announced in the throne speech, because they're saying that this could help possibly fill gaps in policing in rural areas. And so I'm wondering if you see that potentially helping different First Nations.
Yeah, we've seen that in the news as well. And like I said earlier, there is a shortage of RCMP right across this country. The current staff that we have, a lot of the RCMP members are burnt out. And the problem in terms of recruitment for the RCMP, we have a hard time, and the RCMP is having a hard time just in terms of recruitment, finding new people to join the RCMP. Because lately we heard about defunding the police and how we're getting a bad rep in terms of the RCMP all across this country. Who would want to join the RCMP when we're not supporting our own law enforcement within our communities, within this country? We need to change that story. So with the new Marshal service, we don't know. We asked for details this morning. I was on a call trying to get more details on how that's going to look. Anything that would improve the community safety not just within rural communities, within our Northern First Nations community as well. We welcome any new supports in terms of the law enforcement personnel that are going to be deployed to help offset some of the serious crimes that are being committed. These are just some of the low, not as serious crimes that are being, that it's taking a lot of the time of the RCMP. Maybe that's how we can help a little bit. But we all have a role to play in terms of supporting our RCMP and law enforcement and our frontline workers right across this country. They are burning out. Thank you.
Just a further to that, with the announcement and that drone speech from a provincial government to do with the marshal service. I just, I just like to acknowledge the lieutenant governor, who's a treaty First Nation himself, Chris Moraski. That was part of that. A long time, RCMP, a member of elected around. I acknowledge that he was part of that drone speech. So I don't have the full details, but some of the stuff, I guess, that's from the incidents that we had in our First Nations. Unfortunately, members that go into the system, the justice system, they get out. The chief mentioned that they get out. Of course, they're in probation. They commit another crime, and of course, there's a warrant for their arrest. So I think, from my understanding, is part of this marshal service is going to be a police unit in looking at the people that are warrants for their arrest and that are out there, and that was with the James Smith incident, the tragedy that happened. That was the individual that they did these horrific crimes. Was under warrant, and a lot of talk was said about the justice system and the parole board, and how the RCMP never did any work in trying to get this person off the reserve or off the streets. So that's my understanding of the marshal. I can't really further comment to it. Other than that, I think the provincial government that they acknowledge the Prince Albert Grand Council and also the letter of intent that we signed and the work that we are doing already, working towards a community safety plans, and also self-administered policing. Maybe pass this on to the Meadow Lake Tribal Council if they want to comment on marshal service.
Grand Chief is absolutely right. We don't have enough information on what is on the ground from the province on the marshal, the new marshal system that they're going to bring on. We haven't had no literature to it yet. We haven't discussed with our MLAs yet to see what that entails and how it's going to affect our First Nation communities in Northwest Saskatchewan. My initial thoughts from what I read, it is for general public, Saskatchewan people in rural Saskatchewan. I did read nothing about First Nation communities, so I question that, and until I read that and get all the comments, get all the information, I'd like to hold off comment on that till then.
We have a comment online.
Welcome out, Chief Wally Burns.
Chief Wally Burns online.
Yes, yeah, I'd just like to elaborate more on on the issue, on the question that was raised in regards to how, I don't know how this is all gonna lay out, but in regards to response time, it could work or it could not work. You take a look at the Melfort Police Detachment, which is the staffing is much needed in that area. You know, from James Smith to Melfort, it only takes 20 minutes. It doesn't take an hour and 20 minutes. So that response time, this could reduce some of the response time in regards to what the province is trying to work towards to. And I think dealing with all 74 First Nations in Saskatchewan, it might be a good thing, or working towards self-administration and tribal policing. I don't know, because I really want to pick their brains too in regards to what we're trying to do, and I think we're just about there. With that, thank you.
Thank you very much for answering the question.
Thank you. I just want to add, I'm not going to echo too much. I mean, a lot's been said here today, this afternoon. A lot of great comments, a lot of concerns that are being put out there. But again, being blunt, you know, I mean, like I said, you know, some talk about the resources that's being pulled out of our, official judicial territories and stuff like that. A lot of that stuff has been, going back to the government, Saskatchewan government, federal government. But a lot of these things are not being put back into the north. But, some of these things we need to look at. And it's not only about police, and it's about, getting through the trauma that people have endured for many, many years. That's where you start. You start there. You start working on those roots. You start with the people. You show them what needs to be done. I mean, there are people out there that are very smart, very strong, both Denny, Cree, from all across Canada. What I'm saying is that, we talk about police and we talk about this, but one thing I haven't really heard this afternoon was the policy making. My concern is that governments sit in their office, either it's in Regina or Ottawa, they're making policies on our behalf without our input, basically. We're given an opportunity to put some words in there. But at the end of the day, I don't see those policies. They need to understand that we live a different life in a different part of the world here. That's how we live. And that's what they got to see. That's what they got to base their policies on. Living in South Saskatchewan, living in the north, totally two different things. That's how it is. That's what I mean. That's why it's very important that we are involved, leaders are involved in the policy making going forward. I mean, for many, many years, decades, our grandfathers way back were never involved in making decisions. Even the treaties, when the treaties were drawn up, they were never involved. Maybe to some extent, but not to the full extent that they should have been. They should have been listened to. A lot of these things would have been, panned out already. But again, like I said, back to the government, I challenge you to come to the table and sit with the northern leaders in North Saskatchewan, South Saskatchewan. Sit here and let's make these policies together. Let's walk side by side instead of making them already and then giving it to us. Say, here's your policies. No, that's not ours. That's my take on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just want to make a comment. With the RCMP being an issue that we're talking about, the reinforcements, this is some information that I got last week. RCMP in Saskatchewan, 30% are stationed in the north and 70% in the south. Crime rates in Saskatchewan are 60% in the north and 40% in the south. Work that out. Does that make sense? Not to me. Immediate needs to me is because right now, with my second call of state of emergency, I have contracted a security service to work in my community, to patrol 24 hours a day, to monitor. And one of the things that I ask for immediate is cameras for our elders and subsidizing Wi-Fi services for our elders. So if my dad has a camera at his house, I get the notice on my phone that someone's there. and we can send someone there to help if need be. That's our immediate needs that we're asking for. Long term, we're asking for mental health units, rehabilitation programs, detox centers, youth detox centers, transition homes for our people to come back and transition back into our community. Because they are our people. We don't want to push them away. We want to help them. And like the chiefs are saying, we need to go down to the grassroots level of all the intergenerational trauma and deal with those to help our people. So those are the things we need, short-term and long-term. Those are the goals that we set for our community. And like Chief Teddy said, come to our place and ask us what do you need or how can we help you. Stop making policies in Ottawa or Regina and thinking it's going to work in my community, because Buffalo River has different values, different cultures, and different traditions. Come sit at our table and find out what we need, and let's see if it works, because your system hasn't worked for over 500 years. And it's not going to start working now unless you listen to the people in the community and find out what their needs are. Thank you.
I have a question online.
Question from the Canadian Press. Kelly, did you want me to read it or did you want to go ahead?
My internet is also being dodgy, so maybe just read it.
Okay, Kelly Malone, the Canadian Press. Last month, the federal government signed an agreement to explore new ways to improve safety on some First Nations in Saskatchewan. Was that agreement insufficient? Should it be expanded beyond PAGC? How does today's call expand on that commitment?
Can you say that again? Sorry.
To read it again. Last month, the federal government signed an agreement to explore new ways to improve safety on some First Nations in Saskatchewan. Was that agreement insufficient? Should it be expanded beyond PAGC? How does today's call expand on that commitment?
How does it expand on that commitment? Again, earlier, like I said, the work that we are doing based on the mandate from our 12 First Nations for 28 of our First Nation communities within the Grand Council. That working relationship is good. We worked on the work that we were doing since 2008. Building that capacity up to today has been our working group, our public, it's called Prince Albert Grand Council Public Safety Implementation. So there's a lot of work that is being done. It's sufficient enough for now, but as we grow and evolve, it's going to be, we have to see what our capabilities are. Like anything else, we will grow, we will learn and grow and grow to meet the needs of our communities. We don't know yet. We're still fresh. We need to do a lot of work still, a lot of engagement with our First Nation communities. And it is very challenging. But we certainly don't want to inherit a deficit, a program that is failing our communities. But we want to make sure that when we develop this model, that it is a good model. We are opening some eyes. We are paving new road, and we're thinking outside of the box and trying to decentralize policing, because policing is not always the solution. And community holistic approach is very important. And we have to remind our communities, we have to listen to our elders and our leaders and our teachers that we have in our community. So it's a good start. But again, we need the support from the community and the leadership to be there with us and to guide us
It won't be it's not going to be a perfect model. There's going to be some growing pains like anything else. We're going to make some mistakes. There's going to be challenges, but we will learn from it and we'll continue to grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chief.
Supplement answer to that?
Sure.
Here goes straight to the problem. Our neighbors, our good neighbors of the Prince Albert Grand Council, have access to the government to get funding such as the Vice Chief has spoken about. Meanwhile, my chieftain left of me from the Buffalo River Nation, Dene Nation, has called 2 state of emergencies, and those resources were never offered to her. This is where the government's going to come to the table and understand crisis when it's in a community. You know, in Chief Burns' community, horrific things happened, and the government came to their aid, which is good. But we need the government to come to aid to all the communities. We are one event away from having it happen in any of our communities. The federal government, the provincial government has got to step up and understand we are all in the same predicament. You know, in our tribal council alone, in the last month, we've had 4 lockdowns. And I'm going to blame the drugs that causes this to happen in our communities. Long-term needs, detox centers, treatment centers, wellness centers, programming. Short-term, policing, security dollars for our communities. As I spoke earlier about our nurses, they want 24-hour security in their community nursing stations. They want cameras all over their community nursing stations. They want the nursing stations to have a 6-foot fence all around the nursing stations. Those are short-term needs. Immediate needs. To provide safety in our communities, our schools. We had lockdowns in our schools last week, and even in the neighboring city of Meadow Lake. Those are immediate needs for the safety of our little ones that go to school. When their parents send them on the bus in the morning to go to school, we need to make those little children safe. The government plays us off each other when we're all in need of that help. We're all in need of those resources. Those are my comments. Thank you.
In regards to the marshal services that was recently announced, the implementation seems to be going to be 2026. But then again, we in the northern communities, northern First Nations, some of us still don't have access to cell towers, communications. And it's going to be a disservice, even though there is going to be marshal services. How much of that is going to be applied into the north? They're talking about 70 ex-policemen or policemen officers that is going to be. But at the same time, what is the framework of that marshal services? That needs to be identified. At the same time, when it comes down, when it's been coming down, did they participate with the leadership in the north for the First Nations? That's quite important to have that communicated. If it's not communicated, then how would we know? And that's something that's really critical in this day and age. We're on the outside. The train has left, and we're trying to catch up to the train. They never do it. We have to be part of the solution. Be part of what I've heard. Part of the development of the policies. If we're not part of it, then we know where we're going. So with that, thank you very much. Marcy Joe.
Oh, thank you. Just I guess to the question, a supplement to the question of to the question, it was a letter of intent that we signed. And of course, it was the Federal Public Safety Canada, Minister Martel, and provincial government with the Minister Christine Tell and the Prince Albert Grand Council. And that letter of intent is really moving forward on action on the community safety. It could expand to other areas. Absolutely, it can. If that's your question, it can. But with the letter of intent, we are moving forward in the area, let's say, of a self-administered policing, and the feasibility is the very first thing that has to happen in that whole process, and that'll take a lot of time. And then the feasibility. And with any self-administered policing, you have to consult with your First Nations, and your First Nations have to say, yes, this is what we need. Or some First Nations could say, we're happy with what we have. But the consultation has to be there with your First Nations, and that's part of the feasibility study that we'll be getting dollars. There will be one is attached to this, a letter of intent, and I just want to make sure to the media also that the very important piece also to the leadership here is Indigenous policing making to a legislation, and that's something an essential service. It's not there. It's something also that Prince Albert Grand Council is engaging in, but we get a heads up to the Meadow Lake Tribal Council. I think we've got 2 years to try to make that happen with this government that we're in, and that's very important. And that's where all this falls at the end with the self-administered policing. We have to work hard also. We're calling on AFN to work on that. Drafting or be part of that drafting up of that legislation, and to make it through the process of Parliament to get it passed within that timeline. That's a very, very important piece. Also, I just wanted to one last comment here with the marshal service there. We're not saying that we support it, not until we get more information exactly what it is, and we can have a position on that at a later time. So I just thought not to also mention that and commend Lac La Ronge Indian Band for the opening of the Woodland Healing Treatment Center. That's in operation now, and it's a regional healing center, not just for Lac La Ronge Indian Band. Thank you for that, Lac La Ronge Indian Band, our Chief Candy, Cook Searson, and his councillors. It was